Yes, we've had winter. But what about second winter? Mary, I don't think they know about second winter. We got about a quarter, maybe half an inch last night. Looks like a pretty slight dusting. It's still just really cold though, so it's more surprising that it's stuck to the ground. I want to talk about, I guess you would call it readability or expressibility, expression and readability. I was getting back into some code I wrote a while back, and I needed to reacquaint myself with it because I had named things descriptively, but I wasn't sure in what context they were. Like it was maintaining the angle. It was calculating based on the angle, but then it was reorienting the item based on either the original item or maintaining its own orientation. And I didn't know exactly how that was playing out. So if it's snowing, how is there still allergies? Huh? Think about it. Explain that, science. You can't. Allergies, by the way, are like, if you look into that, that's just like, there's like no idea why it happens and why it affects some and not others, and it's just like supposed to be an overreaction, but also it just happens kind of randomly. There isn't much history about it either, but that might just be, you know, not something you bring up if it's just normal. So I have taken to naming my variables to be something more descriptive, because once you make these functions, once you make your code very functional, then all you have to really look at is the imperative section of your code. And once you do that, you should be able to essentially read the code almost as English, or almost as prose. You know, to be able to say the function is called do a thing to two things, or compare two things, and then to that function you pass two things. Well, obviously you know what the thing, those two things are getting the thing done to it. Is this descriptive enough? But even things as simple as numerical values, you know, reading a function that says best guess, and then what you pass to it is a string, another string, not necessarily descriptive, and then 24.29 false. Like that's not helpful. But if the 29 was renamed, or a variable was pointing to 29, and that variable was named angle of the object, and you just typed in angle of the object right there, then hey presto, you've got a much more descriptive, much more readable version of the code. And if you want to know or change the angle of the object, it's easy to find, obviously. A lot of this could obviously be mitigated with comments and just adding more description to it, but why would you add additional information, additional places to look, when you could have one place to look and make the whole thing much more readable, just in general? That is one thing I like about Python, is your if statements roll together with the keywords and, I don't know if it's technically a keyword, the syntax and the syntax or. So it's easy, it's very readable to look at an if statement and evaluate what it's supposed to be doing. And I do like the not statement. I just thought that was neat when I ran across it, and now I understand why, kind of, because, you know, we read read books, read stories, read fan fiction on the internet. We read, and when we look at code, if we can use that reading part of our brain rather than the coding part of our brain, then things fly along much faster. Still, just wiping my nose over here. Ugh. So I have, again, that last argument was just false in that somewhat hypothetical example. The last argument was false. So I took the variable orient and mapped that to false. And now when I read it, the last part says orient, which is I always forget the grammar words. It's not a question. You're making your own. Starts with a P. Dang. It's like prerogative or something. I don't know. Predicate. But it's not. That's not a predicate in that case. I'm just grammar. You're making a statement, and the statement is orient. It's like a command. So when you read the function that you're executing, at the end of it you see orient. You see do the orient. But technically, it's the only thing it's passing to the function is the keyword false. And then if you want to invert that, you can easily and readably write not orient. And now you know that you're not orienting. And not orient is just as readable, and not is already in Python itself, so it just makes everything more readable all around. So thinking about just ways to make things a little bit more, I want to say prosaic. I think that's the right word. Make it read more like text than code. And it'll be easier for you to read and easier for other people looking at the code to read. And when you walk away from it for after a while and come back to it, you'll get back up to speed a lot faster. But that was one thing I liked about Python. Was that the style guide recommended very descriptive variable naming, and it gets a little cumbersome when you have longer variable names, but if you have a good quality text editor, then you can autocomplete all that stuff pretty easily. So it's pretty easy to have start a variable and then create a pop-up window of variable predictions, autocompletion predictions, and then choose from within that window or those options of completions. So then you don't have to, your variable names are long, but they're also very descriptive, and you don't have to type them out every time, because you should be letting your editor do the typing for you. This is the trick to this just sinus drainage, is to unfortunately dehydrate yourself. But fortunately, one of the ways to dehydrate yourself, coffee. Ooh, it is pretty. Let the chickens out this morning. They're like, what is this? What has happened? April showers bring May snowstorms, I guess. This is somewhat unexpected, but second winter is a meme for a reason. Probably a bad time to do that. I have a I'm looking to extend. This is a bit of a programming thing, I guess. I don't know. It seems like it would be an exercise. But I have a series of objects which are next to each other and have relations to each other. Let's just call them, for the sake of argument, keyboard key switches. So, the A keyboard key switch has a relation to the, I was going to say caps lock, but let's say the S keyboard key location. But those key locations are technically, it's not that relevant or important. I guess I want to note the neighbors of the keys and when there's not neighbors of the keys, and make a simple simple function and simple association list so that I can tell what keys have neighbors and what the relation of those neighbors is to the original, or to the host, to the to the key in question. So I should be able to pick any key and then identify the neighbor to the north, east, south, and west, if there is one, and then get information about that neighbor. So obviously this would be very simple to just type in, but who wants to type? All of my keys are more or less numbered in order, but split into rows, obviously. So I should be able to build an association list like that pretty easily. But once that association list is built, and maybe I need to just work backwards, it's a better idea. Uh-oh, your tulips. Do tulips like snow? I don't think they do. The goal is I want to be able to say, if your key is in row 3, move down a quarter unit. And it should be able to figure out which keys are in row 3, figure out what their orientation is, calculate their destination, and then move all of them. What might be more interesting is identifying traces that are in that region and then moving all of those. The other goal is to be able to take that key relation, and knowing that those keys are associated with each other in essentially halves of the keyboard, and then say take one key in the middle and move it to a certain location and give it its own angle, and then say, okay, figure out okay Google, figure out what the rest of the figure out all the neighbor keys, and then using the rules, which is if you're associate off of that center key that was updated and reorient yourself around those keys, observing the rules. And the rules are, if you're row 3, drop down a quarter unit from ostensibly probably the highest one. I guess it would probably be the highest one, the highest column. Yeah, that would make a lot of sense. So you place one key switch, and then all the other key switches orient themselves around it with the matching orientation. And then after those neighboring key switches are set and placed correctly, those neighbors' keys are reoriented. Then after those neighbors' keys are reoriented until there are no more neighbors. I think I just need to work backwards on it. So like I said, it's like a branching out kind of thing. Probably a common programming problem example, but I don't think I've done something like it. So it'll be interesting.